Couldn't hold you.
I don't know if we lose them. Oh, we're live. Okay, very good.
Imot Huygen Kunan Pestok Hahal Nat Nicol Sunday. Jepsons na Kamkamot Launomos na last month. Imot Huygen Nishus na Kamkamstok. And then just some also Imot Huygen Ajut Imot Stoke Imot Help. Okay.
Thank you very much for opening this day in a good way, Larry. Welcome to the Tla'amin Nation General Assembly, June 14th, 2020. We have quite a brief agenda here for you all today, so I'll provide some opening comments once I walk through this agenda. So we have Davis McKenzie, the Finance Committee Chair, with us today to present the 2020-2021 budget. Then we will announce the governance house building a new name, some legislator updates, and we'll go to a question period with item number 5 on the agenda, and then some closing comments. So really thankful for Larry for opening the day in a good way for us. We've had quite a tough spring, many loved ones lost in and outside of this community. So just thought it was fitting to pay our respects to those families that have gone through these trying times throughout this spring. So really excited to share this 2020-2021 budget. And without further ado, we will jump right into the presentation. And Davis, if you're ready, I will stop screen sharing here now and allow Davis, you can put your slides up there now if you like. Oh, Larry.
No, just waving to everybody.
Oh, just what?
Just what? Okay, I'll try share my screen,
smiling.
see if this works. Okay. How's that look?
It looks good.
Can see it, everyone? All right. Ajay Cheput. My name is Davis McKenzie, Ajay Mathowat. My parents are Ann Paul and Neil McKenzie. I really want to welcome everyone. Thanks to leadership for inviting me to be part of your session, and really want to thank and raise my hands to everyone who's joining the live stream, taking time out of your Sunday to participate in our democracy here in Tla'amin, and learn a little bit about where we've been the year past with our finances and where we're going the year ahead. So just briefly to recap, I'm one of 2 community members on the Finance Committee, which is mandated through our own Tla'amin administration and finance law. Our fellow committee members include our Hegus Clint Williams, who's our vice chair, our legislator, John Hackett, who's the Finance and Administration House Post holder. Hello, John. Eric, who is a standing member, Eric Blaney, who's a standing member. He's also another community representative like me, and myself as your chair. I wanted to briefly, before we got into the presentation, really recognize our finance team that works on behalf of Tla'amin. So all through COVID, all through everything that's been going on, the finance team has been making sure our bills get paid, making sure people get paid, and just keeping everything running smoothly. So I wanted to raise my hands to those staff that have kept us going really through this whole crazy times that we're in. And then on top of that, wanted to thank both Steve and Rod, who provide support to us, to our committee, to help us to do the work that we need to do. Quick refresher for those that are just still getting acquainted with our finance and administration laws. The role of our committee is to provide support and oversight to how the nation plans, spends, and reports on its finances. So we have a relationship not only with the staff and the leadership, but also directly in relationship with the auditors. So that's a key role of this committee, is that oversight and being in direct relationship with auditors. How are we doing? You know, how does it all look? Those are the types of relationships the committee maintains. Another role of our committee is to make recommendations about how we control our own finances. So things like policy and process. And one of the things that I'm really proud of, it feels boring to some, but to me, I think it's really important work, is we did a really comprehensive policy review. So stood up a whole suite of policy that stands behind our finance and administration law. And this was really great work that we did with the whole legislator table as a group. So I think that was one of the last times we actually spoke, was to go through that. And the policy includes delegation of financial authority, revised conflict of interest guidelines, and clearer procurement guidelines. So how do we purchase things? How do we make sure we're getting best value for money, and then it's being done fairly? So that was a big piece of work, and my hands are raised to the staff for leading that work. We had some good review and good debate at the table about getting this done. So that was one of our major accomplishments as a committee this year. So I want to jump into the presentation. Those are sort of it for opening comments. But I also wanted to encourage everybody who's jumping in the live stream that you can email your questions, as our head goose pointed out at the beginning of the presentation, to us, and anytime during this presentation. And I believe Alex Sutcliffe is going to be capturing those and working with LOSA to make sure that they get answered. So you can email question@tn-bc.ca anytime during this presentation. So this year we're doing things a tiny bit different. Usually we just sort of give you a sense of, hey, here's the budget, here's what we're thinking. But I think what worked well, and we did this when we met with the whole legislature, was to just take a quick look back at 2020 as a bit of a preface to moving forward and looking at our budget 2021. I think this is because by the time we get to annual report in the fall, that year is like almost 2 years ago, or it's a year and a half ago. So it can feel really far away. So just to kind of continue the storyline about where's our money, where's it coming from, how are we spending it? The idea is to just quickly dip back into fiscal year 2020 and then move into budget 2021. So without further ado, quickly looking back, 2020, there was a lot of significant financial activity at the nation. And I think everyone tuned in on the live stream and our leadership here will be very familiar with the Tla'amin specific claim coming in. That was a major, major financial event for the nation last year. Again, I want to raise my hands to the finance staff who helped get direct distribution to members out the door. That was not a small piece of work, and I think really, really well done. So as you see, the $22.8 million Tla'amin specific claim, that was work that we went out and spoke with, I think, membership in Victoria, Vancouver, here in Tla'amin about, okay, this is coming in, it's a one-time thing, what are we going to do? And what was determined was most of it will go as an investment. So you see here on the slide, 11.6 million invested. Some of it will be enjoyed by current generation today. So that's the 7.9 million in direct benefit. This included the $2 million elder dividend that happened the prior year. And so we had always planned that would come out of the Tla'amin specific claim. Another 3.3 million is reserved for the Children's Trust. So we knew there's a whole bunch of kids, right from those that were just born to those that weren't at age of majority yet, that will be accessing their benefit when they become age of majority. So that's been put away. It's called the Children's Trust. And then there's some admin fees on top of it. So again, big financial event last year, 22.8 million coming in. Important thing to remember about this is the funds were allocated before they even hit the bank account. And that was decided upon through dialogue with community and leadership. Another sort of couple significant things from the last year, cost of living increase to staff pay of 2.5%. This is really important. Inflation is happening, and we haven't always been the best at making sure that our staff are getting that basic cost of living increase. So I think that's really important, and that happened this past year. We were underspent in capital projects, and this is something we talked about a bit when we met with the legislature as a whole. And I think it's really important. I I think I'd said it then and we'd say it now. Welcome Richard Gage, who's our new capital projects manager. And we really look forward to you, Richard, helping us spend this capital projects money, because there's a long list that's been put together, a 5-year capital plan by managers, by leaders. There's lots of stuff to get to, and now we're getting the money come in the doors to actually go through with those projects. Richard's going to be key in making that happen. So welcome aboard, Richard. So what did the last year look like? Wow, it looked really big. However, 50% of this is the Kalani specific claim. So I'm going to show you 2 slightly different ways to look at the last year, one with a specific claim and one without. So if we start by looking with the specific claim, so if you kind of look at this half donut on top, this is our sort of regular revenues that come in. So that's our federal funding, miscellaneous, which is, Run a River projects, all those other smaller funds that we have come in, and then money from the province of BC. So with this, as you can see, the Kalani specific claim, major source, like we talked about earlier, all of it was already spoken for. And what did our expenditures look like? So significantly, again, almost, well, more than 1/3 actually went in direct distribution right out the door to members, right? So that was the Kalani specific claim, and then the elders benefit. You see sort of the other large expenditure here, wages and benefits, that's keeping our operations running. I don't know, Clint, if you can comment on our most recent head count, but I feel like we have about almost 100 staff, or is it more for the nation? I think maybe someone can comment, Rod or Clint. Are we at about 100 staff?
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting. I don't think we're quite that high, but we'd be getting close when you count all the health folks, and that's why I'm a little foggy on the number, because I don't know the total at health. But between the nation and the hatchery and the water plant and so on, we're at about 30, 35.
Okay. Great. So the other major expenditure in the last year was really around the trust, and this is again, this is money that's spoken through. It's already planned, comes into the nation accounts, goes right into the trust. So this is our big picture expenditures when we include the Kalani specific claim. I'm going to just quickly take a look at the year another way. This is without the specific claim. Now this looks more like a normal year for us, right? So assuming with a specific claim, everything came in and everything went out. Here's more of our normal year of operations. So as you can see, 75% coming from federal funding. That's our core funding that we expect from the feds. And then again, this new capital gap funding, which we're going to talk about in the future slides here. But as you can see, this looks like more of a normal year for us, 25.4 million in revenue. And then if we look at our expenditures, and this is without a distribution, this also looks more like a normal year for us. So wages and benefits, almost a quarter of our expenditures, contributions, almost a quarter. And look at that, that's almost 50% of our expenditures. Then we get into the other smaller chunks, health operations, which has been a fairly stable expenditure at 2.5 million. Programs and services, 1.4 million. What you're going to see, and I'll preface it here, is a major lift to our program and service expenditure for 2020 to 2021 fiscal year. So we'll talk about that a bit more in a sec. And then these have remained very stable, so you can see them all listed here for ease of reference. And I'm sure we'll make this presentation available on the website as well. So now looking forward, this is what you're really here to talk about, our 2021 budget highlights. So a couple of things we really wanted to bring to the fore. The first is 4.2 million in gap closing funds. So this is a special fund that the nation received actually at the end of last year and again this year. So together, those two allocations equal 4.2 million. So you can see 2.9 million last and 1.3 million this year. These are targeted funds. And so I think everyone and anyone who was at the AGA last year in Tla'amin, you'll remember the discussion we had about the elders facility and planning and the urgency we heard from people talking about that. I'm really happy to see this in this budget. It's in our capital plan, major work toward that elders facility this year. early childhood education, housing, and our cultural building. Some are calling it the cultural building, some are calling it the longhouse, but that's targeted funds for that. The Tla'amin Food Bank, so I believe this was a proposal-driven one. Roughly around the streets here, it's called Brandy's program. That's how I hear it referred to, but I'm really happy about this one. It's basically a Tla'amin Food Bank, but also wellness programming. So for the kids who prior to COVID were able to, send your kids to the breakfast program, this is all Brandy's good programming. I think it's really, really introduced a new positive element of food security within the nation. So hands raised to all those that wrote the proposals, brought in the money, and Brandy for running that program. 1.4 million in direct benefits for Tla'amin members. So that's the COVID, which we'll talk about in a moment, healthy living dividend, and the Christmas. So that's our regular dividends that we do. And in this coming fiscal year, there's 1.4 million in direct benefit for Tla'amin. The last thing I wanted to talk about sort of as a key highlight is we've been having a lot of talk around the table about living wage implementation. And this is something you may have heard about in the news. And living wage basically means that you're paying your sort of lowest paid employee or entry level or beginner employee at a wage that they can actually live on. So minimum wage has been, a lot of studies have been done about how effective that is for like actually, running a household or raising your family. So Tla'amin's done some research. Thank you, Steve and Rod and Eric and everyone who's contributed to this discussion. And what we're looking at is implementing a starting living wage here in the nation. And also lifting up our wage grid for our staff. So that hasn't been looked at in a while. With all the flurry of treaty activity, there just wasn't time to do that detailed look at setting the proper grid up for our staff. So that's work that's also budgeted for this year to get that taken care of. And finally, there is some analysis underway to look at, so cost of living increases have happened across our staff. Cost of living increases have never been looked at for leadership, and those amounts for leadership compensation is set in law. I actually think this is a really good time to look at it because we're coming on an election. So nobody's giving themselves a raise, like we're gonna have new leadership coming or old leadership or both, a combination of both. So I think it's an opportune time to look at that and think about what is a cost of living increase on that, because that shouldn't really remain static while everything else gets lifted up. So again, we've been starting to have these discussions with the Finance Committee. These are discussions that our own elected leaders. So we've got Clint and John both on the committee. They excuse themselves from this because it's seen as something for the more technician style folks to work on. Big thumbs down this year is we weren't able to do the community engagement we usually do related to the budget process. And this looks like an open house up at the governance building sometimes. So I think we really need to wrap our minds and get creative around how can we do engagement when we can't get together. Meetings like this, I think, is a good start because a lot of companies are now doing digital engagement. But real bummer that we couldn't do that engagement the way that we are used to doing and that we intend to. So what does the future fiscal year look like, the year that we're in right now? Well, it looks a little like this. So you can still see that 2/3 of our money comes from our core federal funding. And that's in an amount of 17.9 million this year. Federal capital gap funding, so that's the 1.3 we talked about earlier. That with the 2.9 from last year bring us to the 4.2. And those were for very targeted projects. This partnership income, this is money that we expect from our group of Tla'amin companies. That said, I'm mindful of COVID and how that's impacting certain companies. So this, in my understanding of it, is our best estimate of what it is that we may be receiving from those Tla'amin groups of companies. Miscellaneous, we had talked about. Province of BC is a funding partner in the amount of, it's climbing year over year. So we're almost at 7% now coming from the province of BC. So that's sort of what our revenue looks like. Again, if anything is prompting you to have a question, please write us at the questions address that Clint flashed up earlier. So we're looking at a balanced budget. So 27.1 million coming in, 27.1 million going out. And as you can see, we have a much higher capital budget than we have in past years. A lot of that is projects that were already planned, we always wanted to do. We sort of didn't quite have all the players in place to really get it done. So with Richard coming on board, we're really excited about that. He's got a good budget to work with. I know he's building out a little bit of a team to really get those essential capital projects built. We're going to look at a list of capital projects as the last slide coming up here. Programs and services. So this is significant. Oh, my kind of funny, not quite showing up right. But if we look at over here, programs and services, so 4.7 million, that's a significant increase from last year's expenditures, as you'll note. And this is really significant because most program areas are getting a significant lift. And that's going to be lead to the ability to expand our programming, offer more. I'm really, really excited about this lift happening for our programs and services. It also speaks to funds being brought in for wellness programs, such as the one that we talked about earlier with poverty reduction. Wages and benefits, pretty static part of our expenditures here, 4.2 million. As you see, health operations, again, 2.5 million, very same as last year. We talked about direct distribution to members, school district 47, so our local education agreement and other education related expenses. We've got post-sec here, professional fees. So that's architects, lawyers, contractors, professional fees that the nation's spending to get some of these projects done and to run core operations. And then you can sort of see some of the other smaller cost items here. Quickly wanted to go over with the community and everyone tuning in, what are some of the COVID budget impacts? So we did receive $407,000 to deal with the impacts of COVID here at the community level. Our expenditures were more than that. Leadership did make a decision that, you know, there was a lot of federal funding coming, but it wasn't quite reaching the community members yet. So wanting to get something in quickly in place. So we did have a surplus from the prior year that we drew upon to bring it up to this total cost amount of 823. So the deficit around COVID, so what came in federally versus what was spent, the difference there is 416,000. We look to take that from prior year surplus. That said, I understand that some of the protective supplies and cleaning equipment that we bought, some of it fairly expensive. We may be looking to get a reimbursement for that. So I know our finance team is still working on that, but for full transparency, wanted to sort of show what that cost of COVID has been to the community so far. This is pretty, want to be brief on capital budget, but a couple key things. The capital budget it's different than the operations budget, and it includes major projects, so money for the acquisition or maintenance of fixed assets, such as land, buildings, and equipment. It's driven by nation priorities, and in particular, it's driven by the nation's own 5-year capital plan, which was built in partnership with program managers. So a couple of things important. So I've been calling this the elders facility, but I guess it's more accurate to call it the long-term care facility. That's a major item. Public works yard. This is a project that's been on our capital list for a few years now. So I understand that's a huge priority for our new director. So that's really exciting. Storage for our brand new fire truck. I don't know how many of you have seen that around the community, but we've got our new fire truck now. You can see here some social, cultural category. So there's funds, and this is from the GAP funding for our CDRC, so Community, I want to say Development Resource Center, the Chewy School expansion there. Funds have been secured for 5-plex housing and the cultural building, which some are calling the Longhouse. Boat for Guardian Watchman, that's also in this year's capital budget. And then a few key projects, which I don't know if Clint or John may want to add some detail around this, but the water line for the hatchery, design for the sewage system, and then the Tla'amin Lake Dam, which I understand that one's been on our books for a couple of years, and we're just trying to really look to get that one done and make it a priority this year. So I think without even taking a breath, that's my presentation. But I'd look forward to any questions anyone might have. And yeah, please do write in your questions. And I think with that, I see Eric's joined us. We've got John and Clint. So turn it over to our other committee members for any comments they may have. Thank you.
Sure. Is there anything from the legislators? I know you've seen this presentation once already before, but is there any questions that you may have before Davis takes the slideshow down? Nope. Sounds good. Don't go too far, Davis.
Okay.
Basically, I'd like to thank Davis for pulling this presentation together. I'd like to see this posted on the website for sure. The presentation looking back and looking forward kind of shows how we got here and our goals moving forward. It's really clear and detailed. I encourage our community members to take a look at it. Really, it paints a really clear picture of where we are right now and moving forward.
No, thanks for that, John. And having been around on council and then being in the Hey Goose role, being a signer over all these years, you look at the expenses and how they've kind of stayed the same for a long time. For the longest time, our payroll biweekly was about between 50 and 55,000 biweekly. And so with us filling some of these empty boxes on our org chart, we've more than doubled. So I think the last payroll that I approved was at about 120. So really, going from 50 for the longest time and jumping up to 120, filling these empty boxes on the org chart, it's really quite significant. And the health payroll is separate from that number. So health is in about that 50,000 biweekly range. So pretty exciting times. There's a lot of new projects happening, and things are going well. And Davis, I think that was an amazing presentation. I thank you very much. It was well done, and it was even better the second time around. Oops, where am I here? My screen's messed up.
I don't know if you can see him, but Larry's got his hand up.
Okay, yeah, Larry, go ahead. No, my screen, I clicked so Larry?
Yeah, that was very good, Davis. That's thank you very much for that. I just kind of wondering for the next session, 2000 whatever, 21, can we have like preview of the report before we actually have a meeting? So everybody can have a look at it and make their questions ahead of time. That's just a comment. Thank you, but that was really good. Thank you.
Just to clarify, Larry, do you mean to post the presentation publicly so citizens can think through their questions, or something different?
Yeah, like a preview. Like whatever you call it, preview of the report before it would actually come to the meeting, so people can have a look at it. You know what I mean? Is that possible?
Yeah. So would that be different than the presentation I gave the legislature already, or? I'm just trying to. I want to understand for sure. Right.
Are you asking for the community, Larry, so the community can see it before the meeting?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
I think there's somewhat of a community consultation when we're doing some of the other sessions, because we do talk about the budget, but I don't think you've done a full community engagement prior to this presentation, have you, Davis? Like, I think we've done a couple of rounds of consultation through Victoria, Vancouver, and then back here at home, and I don't think we've had you tag along, but I think we've kind of relied on the finance house post holder to be providing those updates and kind of receiving that input. So I don't know, maybe moving ahead, Larry, maybe we can try to structure something, because we're trying to go to these quarterly meetings with the with our people,
Yep.
And maybe that's where we can try to capture that is maybe the House Post leader can have some info on that. Good, Larry?
Good.
I guess see Rod's hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to say with the consultation, it's really because of COVID that we didn't do it this year.
Yeah.
Last year and maybe the year before, we did do consultation in the community prior to this meeting happening, so people could throw ideas at us. But we just couldn't do it this year because of the restrictions.
Yeah, I think that meeting usually happens in February, but I think it's a really good point because we only do that meeting locally here in Tishosum. It's not a discussion that's brought to with broader discussions to Vancouver and Victoria. Yeah.
True. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, good. Well, we'll hold off on questions from our membership as we work our way through a couple of these other items if nobody has anything else at this time. Okay, item number 3 on our agenda is the renaming of the governance house. Where am I? Can't find. We wanted to share with our community members the updates on the naming contest. So governance building new name. As a result of the Tla'amin members requesting to rename the governance building, the nation organized a contest for the members to provide their submissions. The Legislative Assembly, by consensus, selected the following names. Oh man, Larry, you got your thinking cap on. So for the overall governance house is How Hegus Aya. That's the governance house. How did I do on that, Larry?
Good. Yeah.
How Hegus Aya. So the meeting rooms internally within the governance house. So the community room, which is located on the first floor, is now been renamed to the Chief Tama Timothy room. Okay. Then there's the second floor lands. Wait, hang on. Sorry. No, first floor. First floor meeting room by the north entrance has been renamed to the Tla'amin room, so cedar. And Larry, I'll need your help on the eagle here. So the executive room, the smaller boardroom, is eagle. Larry.
Ike. Yeah.
Okay. My pronunciations aren't the best. So the other larger boardroom on the second floor, located by the finance office, is Larry. Yu Temshin.
Moving forward.
Anyone have any questions on that, legislators? Seeing none, I think we're all good. I'll stop sharing. Okay, so I think maybe what I'll do is if there's any brief updates from the legislators, we'll just work through. I think we'll start with the House Post leaders. So Lance, Lori, do you have any updates you want to share with the community for this session?
Well, Davis highlighted the main ones, the Elders Residential Long-Term Care Facility. That's going to take a couple of years, but that's coming. And early childhood education building, that's a new one that's going to be built as well. And that'll be here a lot sooner. And then we have 2 social housing complexes. They're going to be 5 plexes, so they're going to make 2 of them side by side. So that's going to be a new building on our lands, 2 new social housing buildings. And then our Longhouse Cultural Center is another new building that's coming. And then we have just purchased a new Guardian Watchman boat for a new Guardian Watchman program. And those are the big ones. And everyone's waiting for spring cleanup, so stay tuned for that.
Okay, good. Moving along. Finance, John. I think we've been on finance for a bit, but is there anything you wanted to add?
No, just with the review of the budget and everything, I could honestly say we're sitting in a really good place right now. Moving forward, we have a lot of opportunities ahead of us, and look forward to a bright future there.
Good. Moving down through the house posts here, community services, Larry. Oh, you're on mute, Larry.
I'd like to congratulate everybody in these trying times of COVID, and everybody doing their part, social distancing and keeping with the program. It's kind of a scary situation that we're in right now, and we're still going to be in it for a long time, I think, and hope everybody just maintains the integrity of health, just to follow it through, especially from Dr. Henry, Bonnie Henry, the province there. And to Davis, John, in the finance for keeping us straight. I'd like to commemorate a lot of the people that we lost this year. Only just too many, too sad. Just got to be appreciative of the fact that we're all here. Hey, Mort.
Great. Thank you very much, Larry. Moving on to Public Works, Tyrone.
Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I'd just like to start off by thanking the Finance Committee and all our financial workers that we have in place for putting this budget together and presented it to our community live streaming, and hope everybody's all well and safe and taking care of their families. But as far as the Public Works house posts go, for me, it's actually exciting times. Just at the end of this, first term for me as a counselor for the nation, we got Richard Cage coming in, which he's going to have his hands full with a lot of new developments going on in the community. And when you say stuff like that, it's great to see or hear of it, and then to see it is going to be another thing, to actually see our nation growing as one entity. That we're moving in the right direction. I think we have all the proper people in the right places to push us forward to the next step, just to bring us to that next level of self-governance. For housing, like Lori was saying, we got a bunch of stuff going on with the fiveplexes and whatnot, and hopefully we could start moving some families around and making more space and opportunities for members to actually come home and actually move home for the first time in decades. But yeah, our fire hall is doing well. I really appreciate all the hard work and dedication that our volunteers have went through in the last little bit through this COVID-19. I know it's not easy, but we all have families to go back to. But we did purchase that new fire truck, and it looks great. It's top of the line truck that just adds a good sense of security for our community. As far as our department goes, we've come a far away from our old 80s GMC 4 and floor truck. Personally driven that thing, and it's not the nicest truck, but it worked. And it got us through a lot of trying times. But here we are, 2020, and we got ourselves a brand new fire truck. And we've limped along all these years, and it was really nice to see the truck rolling around the community. And they're going to be putting a bunch of additions to the truck. Hopefully we'll have everything rolling on the truck within the month, but there's a bunch of inspections that have to go through and whatnot from when I was talking with Eric last week. But yeah, hats off to our fire department for doing their thing. With the water plant and Richard Cage and Sean, I think we're going to be fairly busy with a bunch of projects coming up this year, and it's really great to see. And yeah, just like to take my hat off and raise my hands in respect to our leadership here for getting us where we need to be today, and our finance committee. I think we have all the proper people in the right places to move forward. With that, I'd like to say stay safe and take care of your families. You what?
Thanks, Tyrone. Moving along, Denise, would you like to provide any updates from yourself personally?
Sure. Nice to see everybody again. Glad to know everybody's still safe, and happy to hear that our communities are still safe in this COVID crisis. I'm hopeful that things are changing. Watch the news every day, probably several times a day, like most people, and it looks like we're doing well so far. So fingers crossed that we all stay healthy. Yeah, I want to thank Davis and the Finance Committee and the executive and all the staff that have done all the hard work to get us to this place. Lots of work going on. It's exciting. It's a good place to be. I think back to times when staff were volunteering at the office when we had no money and we couldn't pay bills, and the hard times that our nation went through. So it's a good place to be. It's been a good 4 years. Lots happened in the last 4 years. I am also happy to have Richard on board. I think there's a lot of big projects going on, and it's good to have to finally have somebody at the helm for those projects. Yeah, it's just good to see everybody. Good place to be. Laurie mentioned the purchase of the boat for the Guardian Watchman program. Very excited that our nation is investing in the program this year. This will be the first time we have Marine Patrol in our territory. And that's going to be really exciting to get our people out on the land and doing what they want to do, monitor, patrol, and take care of our resources for our people. So that's going to be really exciting this year. So watch for that. We'll do announcements, and hopefully we'll be able to get together and introduce the Guardian Watchman in person at some point. Take care, everybody. Nice seeing you all. Thanks.
Great. Thanks a lot, Denise. Gloria.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'd like to thank the Finance Committee also for all the work that you guys done for the band. We are in good standings. It is a good feeling. I know I'll echo everything that what you guys just said. For myself, I'm a legislator, and I don't participate in a lot of things. I think some people in the community off and on the reserve are some of them aren't aware of that, and I do have to explain to them that I do not attend meetings, and that there's the other four, the executors, and I explained to them that I'm a legislator with the other three people, that we it's just the four executors that do attend the meetings and make the decisions that goes on in the community and for the staff and for the band. And I do I'm going to say, that I hear a lot of complaints about that. And I know we heard that at the Sailor Center, was it last year, regarding that, a lot of people were not happy with the way our system is, with only 4 people and the Haggis making the decisions, that they think that it should be all 8 of us participating in meetings. I agree with that. I totally agree with that. I don't know how anybody else feels, but I'm just thought I'd bring that up now because it's just I know we can probably change that in the near future. I think legislators can change that, but I just wanted to bring that up because I don't know what goes on. I don't work in the band, and I don't talk to any of the executors very often at all. To be honest, I don't know what's going on. I don't even know who Richard Gate is. Sorry, I don't have a clue who he is at all. I mean, I know Philip Lee is our new DevCorp or Tla'amin manager. I'm very happy to see him on board. But anyways, I don't know. Can someone tell me who Richard Gate is, please? Richard Cage is?
So Richard Gage is the director of I guess it's director of public works. Is that the proper title, Rod?
Yes, that's the proper title.
So Richard's background is he's an engineer, and he's worked in various roles. He's worked with BC Hydro, and I think he's worked a number of different roles. So we had a job posting out for some time. We were falling further and further behind on these capital projects. We didn't have anyone to coordinate these projects, so we've sent out a job posting seeking an engineer to help coordinate these projects. So Richard was the successful applicant. I think he's lived in the Paul River area for about 2 years, I think he said. So he's definitely got his hands full. He's jumped in and he's been making his rounds, helping with housing matters and water treatment plant and village maintenance. So he's jumped in with both feet, and I think he's doing a really good job. His personality is he's a really easygoing guy, so he's easy to talk to. Kind of steered a couple of people to talk to him already because they were feeling frustrated that discussions were not going anywhere, and I think he's helped them out a lot. So Director of Public Works. So
Okay.
another piece of news in that same area is we've hired I don't know, I hate to use the word junior, but a subordinate to the Director of Public Works, and I think it's official now. We've just hired Carmen Gallegos to come on to help coordinate some of these projects. So the thinking is that Carmen will kind of be mentored by Richard Gage to do some of this work. So a lot of these projects, I don't think she's even started yet. It's still pretty fresh, but so we are trying to fill some of those empty spaces in the org chart because it is slowing us down in some of these on some of these projects.
Okay.
You look like you wanted to jump in there, Rod.
Okay.
Okay, Gloria, you good?
Yeah, I am.
So-
Thank you.
Okay, good. So just to help the audience, so the Tla'amin Nation government is broken into two sections. So everybody is elected as a legislator, all 8 of us. And so the legislators are kind of, with an internal election, are split into 2. So there's an executive council on one side that deals with the day-to-day operations. And so those executive council members are selected on an internal election of those 8 by the 8 elected legislators. So not by the public, but by the people elected in. So the other side of this is the legislators. So when we meet as the full as a full legislature session, the legislators deal with laws, budgets, and law amendments, just on the larger items. So there's two different levels of decision making that are happening. So that the second part is what the legislators focus on. Okay. So moving on, I don't want to repeat everything that everybody has said. Moving some of the economic development pieces that are in place is there's a posting out for a new store manager, and I think that may have ended. They may have selected an individual, but I don't have a name at the moment. Just for those of you that may be signing into this from out of town, the Lund Hotel has been shut down since this COVID piece has started, since I think about mid-March. So the pub, restaurant, hotel basically just shut down for this whole COVID piece. And so just just when that was starting, we were renovating the old marine building that is on the backside of the Lund Hotel. So relocating the store. So the store is no longer on the upper part of the hotel. It's located in the back parking lot now. They renovated the old marine building. It looks great. If you're ever in town, you should swing by and have a look at it. It looks really good. It looks pretty close to a full grocery store. So just kind of wanted to mention that from the Lund. Then there is a tender out for bids for the fiveplex. So that's tendered out. So that's out in the public right now. So there'll be another tender that will be heading out shortly. This will be a tender for building the public works yard and canoe shed. So with all of our brand new assets, we need somewhere to house these assets out of the weather, and just so that there's no theft or vandalism happening. So we're really looking at trying to get this public works yard done. So this would be a big warehouse where we'd be able to bring things indoor and not be leaving them outside in the weather and out in the open. Another project you may be hearing about sometime soon is is a potential campsite to be developed in the Gibsons Beach area. So we've been approved for a heavy equipment operator training program to assist with this. So the thought is to build an RV park campsite in the Gibsons Beach area. So we do own land in this area. So we're looking at approximately about 20 hectares to clear and put grass in there. So we could hopefully use that for camping area for the upcoming 2021 canoe journey. So that work hasn't started yet. They haven't even advertised they haven't sent a posting out to advertise for participants in this HEO training program, but I imagine that's going to be coming soon as the COVID-19 pieces seem to be easing up a little. So if anyone's listening, please stay tuned. We'll put it on the website once we have the posting. So there's a few exciting projects coming down the line here. So I'll just leave it at that because I know I'll just end up repeating a ton of different things. And with that, I think we can move to the question section here. I think Losa or Alex, do you have any questions for us?
I actually do. I'm just working on clarifying on the questions. So I'll be right back and I'll check again.
Maybe as Losa is working that out, there was one thing I had forgotten to mention, which I think is important news, and that's around the treaty loan forgiveness policy. And I really don't think we discussed that at the last AGA, but in terms of building up our own coffers and building up our own financial stability, that's a new stream of revenue being introduced back, and that we don't have to pay back those treaty loans. So I know our leadership was involved in that discussion that got that work done and got that policy change. So I think it's important to reference that work here because Tla'amin was a big part of that policy change. So thanks.
No, that's good. And I think we mentioned it a few times, but over the past couple of years that we were trying to do it, and I think we just recently, actually it was in the last edition of the NEMA, we did receive the official letter, and I believe Steve was going to put it in the last edition of the NEMA. We actually did receive the letter confirming this because we were always a little unsure. It's like, well, it sounds like they're going to do it. So we actually did receive the official letter, so it is confirmed. So glad to receive that letter. No, thanks for bringing that up, Davis.
Yeah, it looks like he put the whole letter right in the memo.
Yeah, but it's big news. I think it is. Was it 5.2 or 5.7 million?
5.7, I think.
$5.7 million forgiven on the loan. So that is good news.
Or Steve, can you jump in? Is that correct?
I don't have the exact number at my fingertips, sorry. But I can confirm that we have just received the first payment, first of 5. So it's just about 5.6. So somewhere around there.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay,
all right, I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, this is from Sally Louie. Are non-BEM members eligible for housing and for the 5-plex? And then the comment is, one parent is a band member. They are not registered and do live in our community. So I guess the question is, are non-band members eligible for housing and for the 5-plex?
I think we're trying to look after our own as a priority. I think it's only safe to say that we're trying to look after our Tla'amin people as a priority. So I don't think anything's impossible, but I think any rentals or anything like that, we're trying to give priority to the Tla'amin people. So I would say that that Tla'amin people do take precedent. Is there anything else anyone wants to add?
Yeah, she can submit a letter to the housing committee if she's concerned about something specific. Thank you.
Okay, not seeing any other response. Wilsa, is there any other questions?
That is it.
Okay, good. But so, well, maybe just to add on to that a little bit, Tla'amin citizens are the only ones who can own land on our treaty settlement lands. So we're no longer Indian Reserve. So it's kind of a hard habit to get out of, not calling this place a reserve, but we are treaty settlement lands now. So the Indian Reserve no longer exists. We just have Tla'amin lands. And so in order to own land here, you would have to be a Tla'amin citizen. Otherwise, it would be nation-held land. I don't know if there's anything else anyone wants to add to that.
I do.
Yeah, Denise.
I think of the question, I don't know, maybe the question is whether or not if you're a Tla'amin person with a non-native spouse, and of course we do house people in our community that have married somebody that's non-Tla'amin if housing is available. Second thing was I just wanted to mention the land use plan update that we've been talking about. We're looking at updating our land use plan for Tla'amin lands, including this community, Tishosam. And we're also looking at doing some neighborhood planning, looking at basically pulling out our maps of our lands and saying, where do people see neighborhoods in the future? For example, we have land in Wildwood, we have land in Lund, we have land in Westview, we have land out in Oakover. So we know different people want land for different reasons. So we're going to be undergoing that land use plan update and really encourage people to come out and give us your thoughts on that, because we don't necessarily have to just live here in Tishosam, right? We have a lot of land and we will expand and people will want to live in different places in the future. So I think we wouldn't be ruling out other people living on our land. I know in Westview, for example, we've talked about creating neighborhoods that are for economic purposes that other people would live on, but also having neighborhoods where our people could live too. So yeah, I'm rambling a bit, but I guess I was just trying to put a plug in for the land use plan, that this is where I would really like to hear from you on what people would like to see us do with our land and our land use in the future. Thanks.
No, that's helpful. No, thanks, Denise. And I'm sure we'll be doing public consultation with our people on this and kind of all the surrounding areas. So no, it's important. So, any other thoughts before we get to the closing comments? Any of you want to share any closing comments if there's no more questions streaming in?
Have you guys decided what's going to happen for our elections in September regarding because of the COVID? Are we still going to do the nominations when we're supposed to and do the elections in usually in September? Or have you guys gotten that far ahead yet?
So right now we've selected an electoral officer, and so we have an electoral officer brought on board, and they're making all the arrangements. And it looks like the election date may be September 19th. It's not. She's counting out the days from when we need to make announcements. So we will have to have the nomination sometime in July. So I think it's like maybe mid-July is kind of what I heard. So we have the first part done. The electoral officer is hired. So nominations will be coming up soon in July, and looks like potential about September 19th.
And on the Wednesday executive council meeting this week, we should be announcing the election and the date. So we'll have it by then.
Who did we get for the electoral officer?
Lawrence Lewis. He's pardon?
One Feather, I believe the company is called.
Oh, right, One Feather.
They're based out of Victoria, I think it was. Was it Victoria?
I think he's Victoria, yeah.
Do they specialize in digital voting? I feel like they do,
yeah,
right?
They do.
Yeah.
That's part of it for sure. And the nomination meeting will probably happen like this, unless things turn around in the next.
Yeah, it kind of all depends on where we are in these stages. I thought I heard Dr. Bonnie saying that we may be going into stage 3 in the next little while here, but I guess you never know what's going to happen with the caseloads that are around us. So maybe if we do end up in stage 3, maybe it might be in person, but this will be a backup.
I have another question.
Sure.
This is from Debbie Wilson. Other bands are providing traditional foods and garden boxes to community members, especially elders, during the pandemic. Is this something our band will consider?
Isn't there's elder support packages that leave this office and get delivered to our elders? Is there not, Rod or Steve? I've seen all the
Yes.
packages out in the front.
Yes, that's correct. And also the food bank initiative. And we do have the community garden down by Amstown. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but that is for the community.
Okay. So maybe Debbie, maybe Debbie might not just be aware of this program, but it is there is a specific elders program that they do send packages right to their homes. That's been happening, I think, since this pandemic began. Okay, good. Well, I guess if there's no further questions rolling in, I want to thank you all for your time and tuning in, and especially want to thank Davis and Eric and John for and of course Steve and all the ladies in the finance department for all their great work in providing all these numbers. And Davis, he did a great job of pulling together the slideshow and delivered it amazingly. So wealth of information, and I think that slideshow would be very valuable to have on the website, because it really paints a picture of what's happening in our community. There's many amazing things happening in our community, and I think there's more to come. This is just the beginning of it. I think as we bring on more staff, we're able to deliver fuller, bigger programming and services. So look forward to what the future brings, and please enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and thank you for tuning in on behalf of the Tla'amin Nation legislature. Thank you for tuning in, and have a great day.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Shetem Kunama.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Chetan Spunava.
everybody.
Yeah,
Amawiga.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.